I already forgot to start. So we started off, for those of you watching the recording, talking about some different niches of a panther. And we're going to be looking at a species niche and how they affect other organisms and how competition affects resources available for species in a community and some of the factors that affect what's called resiliency, the main one being biodiversity. So the unique position that's occupied by a species, both in terms of its physical use of its habitat and its function in the ecological community, is what is called its niche. And I know it's spelled kind of funny, N-I-C-H-E, but that refers to kind of that organism's job in its community. And a niche is not the same as a habitat, and that's kind of a confusing thing for students sometimes. A habitat is, remember, where an organism lives, whereas a niche is the role that that organism plays in the community. And this role affects the other organisms within the community. So if I asked you guys to tell me what your habitat is, what is your habitat? Describe your habitat, your home. What is your home? What is your habitat? I'm waiting for 22 of you, I believe. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22. Yes, 22 of you. My mom would have said mine is messy, right? You need to clean it up. Put your clothes in the hamper, right? What am I talking about? Let's type something in. If you don't know how to define or describe your home, we're going to have some problems. Biology is going to be tough. 22 responses is what I'm looking for. In 5, 4, 3, there we go. My room, your house in your neighborhood, that's a good one. House, home, Bay City, okay, where I sleep. Bay City might be a little too big, but I get it. You could consider that. I always think of it as like a bird's nest, or the tree it lives in is its habitat, and then its niche would be like something else. Old, warm, big, clean, cluttered, messy, you know. Unpredictable weather. My habitat is kind of messy, sort of clean, depending on which corner of the room you're in. Okay, ORVs and other toys, yay. Home in the woods. So then if I asked you, what is your niche, what would you tell me? What's your niche? What is your niche? What is it? What is your niche? Your niche. I actually kind of missed you guys the last couple of days. I was getting sick of hanging out with a bunch of old people. We can be kind of boring sometimes, let me tell you. You guys laugh a lot more than adults, you know that? Because you got a lot longer to live. It's kind of sad but true, right? Sad but true. In 5, 4, 3. Come on now. Come on. It's an idle threat that I'm going to click the button before I get 22, but it's going to happen. Give me your responses. I need to get to 22 real fast, guys. It's okay to be wrong. What is your niche? Oops. Got one more coming through. Okay, so you're a student right now. I like that. Okay, so student is your niche right now. It's your role in your community. Okay, and eventually you'll have a bigger role for sure. What I eat when I take a okay, kinda. I kind of get where you're going there. Maybe. I've never ate a Pop-Tart in the shower though, but. Place where I sleep during the night. Okay, kind of. That's more your habitat here, right? Place where you sleep and eat. That's kind of your habitat. The role is a little different. Your role is to take up all the hot water. You are definitely one of my daughters. They will take all the hot water. The neighborhood, Bay City is kind of more. You're looking at habitat. I'm more or less looking for your job. Ah, there you go. Like video gaming, school, driving, getting a job, eating, bathroom time. Okay. Clean my room, eat your food. So your role, right? So the entire range of conditions where an organism or species could survive is called its fundamental niche. In my own words, I would explain that. I'm a science guy. I could have been a lot of different types of scientists. I could have been a doctor. I could have been a nurse. I could have been a physical therapist. I could have been a radiologist. I could have done a lot of different things in science. But that would have been my fundamental niche, everything I could do. Will I ever do all of my fundamental niches? No. You don't want somebody teaching you about biology, doing brain surgeries, radiology, and nursing all at the same time. You wouldn't know enough about any one of them to be good at any of them at that point. Okay? So many species share parts of their fundamental niche with other species, and sometimes species compete for limited resources. Do you know that's my wife's ringtone for when I call her? I quack at her. It's kind of funny. No, maybe not. I gave her a nice one. She gave me a duck. Wah, wah, wah. She says, that's what you sound like. You never stop quacking. I do talk a lot, though, I know. Oh, that'd be worse, wouldn't it? You don't do that. You don't put the mood tone ringtone for your wife unless you want to die. Right? That's just a bad idea, I'm telling you. So because of this competition inside of these overlapping fundamental niches, you're never going to find more than one species in the same niche. It just doesn't work like that. Okay? So because of this competition, the species almost never inhabits its full fundamental niche unless there's no competition at all. And competition for resources between species shape a species' fundamental niche, and the actual niche that that species does is called its realized niche. So although I could do all of these different things, I am a biology teacher. That is my realized niche. Okay, so I have this large fundamental niche, everything I could be. We've all heard that, right? You can be anything you want to be, but what you actually are would be my realized niche. So sometimes competition results in fights between rivals. So I would think of that as like a job interview, right? You got to interview for your job. You got to fight, so to speak, for the job. So like I applied for a biology position. There were like 100 applicants because at that time there were a lot of people looking for a job, and they went through them, and then they got rid of some, and then they interviewed only a few, and then they hire you. But there is competition there, right? In the animal world, this is a little different. See two bucks fighting, or like a chipmunk and a squirrel fighting for the same nut. You know, they want to drive the other one out of their habitat. Competition. So many competitive interactions do not involve direct contest. So this is kind of the early bird gets the worm idea, right? So if the resource is gone, it's not there, and there doesn't need to be this direct conflict, but still competition. So when one individual takes a resource, the resource is no longer available for another individual. Can you guys think of two different species other than the early bird gets the worm situation where this would happen, where there is not direct competition? A situation where it's like when the early bird takes the worm, a situation out in the wild, we'll say, where a resource is removed by one organism and then it's not there for another species. So they outcompete them without direct contact or direct competition. Seven, 6 more. Three more. Two. Hit enter. Here we go. So a caterpillar eating a leaf off a tree, and then it's not there for another caterpillar or a rabbit or something. Okay. Lion eats an elephant, and the tiger is affected. Okay, that works. I don't know if there's lions and tigers in the same neighborhood, but we're going to go with that. Plants getting sunlight. Oh, yeah. Like plants compete with each other for sunlight, right? That makes sense. Kind of they spread their leaves out, they take the sun, and then, well, of course, that's more direct competition, really, you know, because they're both trying to grow taller and make bigger leaves against each other. Fish gets the bait, snakes and mice. Okay, so if a snake eats the what are the snakes and the mice both after? This is more predator-prey. Fish get, what? What? Oh, they are both after survival, yep. I was thinking where one took a resource from the other, not ate the other one, though. Fish getting a worm, okay. Fish eats a fish, and then it's not there for another fish. Okay. So if a bear eats the fish, it's not there for the raccoon. I'll go with that. First come first. Deer eating, I don't understand that. Deer don't eat meat. Okay, there might be a slight misconception of the question. Here's why. It would have to be something like two different species. Like, let's say a chipmunk gets to the oak tree earlier in the morning and it takes all the nuts, and then there's no nuts for the squirrel, right? And so the squirrel has to go to a different yard. That would be indirect competition, where they didn't fight. Now, if they were fighting over the nut, like chewing on each other, that's different, okay? Like playing tug of war with a nut, they're going to, you know, obviously one's going to win at the end of that. That's direct competition. So I was looking for a more indirect thing. But competition has several possible different outcomes. Sometimes one species wins and the other loses. The loser is eliminated from the habitat, and we kind of understand that. That's pretty simple. Other times competitors can survive together in the same habitat, and they're able to survive because they actually divide the resources. Now, it's not like the squirrel goes, okay, one nut for you, one nut for me, one nut for you, one nut for me. But they find different ways to kind of coexist. It'd be like if we all went to, let's say there's three of us, and we all go to let's go to Pizza Hut. We all go to Pizza Hut, and I like pizza, and like you like breadsticks, and someone else likes salads. We aren't competing for the same resource because we all like different things, but we're dividing the resources up. So we can all coexist in the Pizza Hut community. However, if two of us like pizza, we can't eat the same piece of pizza. One of us is going to compete and win the pizza, right? And so it's kind of a simple way to think about it, but sometimes you can divide the resources and not have to have that direct competition. So no two species that are too similar can actually coexist because they are too similar in their needs. Like if we both want pizza, we are not going to both be able to exist in Pizza Hut. One of us is going to have to get out competed, and the other one has to go to Little Caesars. Now, one will be slightly better at getting the resources on which they both depend. Now, the more successful species will dominate resources. The less successful species will either die off or have to move to another ecosystem. This happens all the time. Now, eventually, the better competitor will be the only one left, where one species eliminated another through what is called competitive exclusion. Competitive exclusion. Excluding somebody through competition. We do this with sports all the time, right? It's no big deal. We understand this concept. Can you guys just think about when you've watched the Discovery Channel and tell me an example of competitive exclusion? Competitive exclusion. Now there is that direct competition. Competitive exclusion. I'm going to leave a running tally here, and we'll just look at them as they come up. Animals fighting for females, for sure. That's within the same species. Giraffes fighting. Okay, that's still within the same species. That's okay, though. This predator-prey is not really what we're talking about here because they aren't competing for the same resource. One's trying to get their life. Us versus polar bear, yeah, we're both competing for the same, for climate in a way. It's a little indirect, but yeah. Plants fighting for sunlight, yep. The taller one and the one with the bigger leaves wins, right? The other one has to either use less sunlight or dies out and has to grow somewhere else. A lot of times they get pushed and have to grow out away from it. That's part of succession, too. Bees fighting for pollen, yeah. I don't know if I've seen that one, but I'll go with it. Sure, it happens. Mating for plants, trying to get to this. Oh, mating competition or plants. I was going to say I've never seen two plants duke it out for a flower. Well, flower has both parts, but We'll get to that later. Okay. Lion and a tiger for the zebra again. Is there a place on the planet where lions and tigers exist together? I don't think so either. Yeah. Well, the tigers are actually kind of in Siberia and then part of the jungle. You're right. There's the hotter climate ones too. The lions are in the savanna. Yeah. Okay. So sometimes competitors eat the same kinds of food and are found in the same places. These competitors divide resources by feeding in slightly different ways or in slightly different places. This is that division of the resources we were talking about. See, animals, they don't really want to waste time fighting with each other, but they will if they need to get the resources. But if they can come to an easy way where they can both survive and exist, they'll do that. So in Michigan, we have something called the Kirtland's warbler. Has anybody ever heard of the Kirtland warbler? Have you? You know where the Kirtland warbler goes in the winter? No, they go to the Bahamas in the winter. And then they come back to northern Michigan in the summer, or spring, summer, and then they nest in only between 8 and 10 foot tall jack pine trees. This is crazy. And then they'll only nest between 6 and 8 feet in that tree. So they're really particular. That's why they're endangered. The reason that they are endangered is because we don't have forest fires anymore, or as many, and the jack pine tree needs forest fires to reproduce. Its cones don't open up unless there's a forest fire. And so that is a type of warbler. So they're selective in where they live, and here's why. We look at these 5 different types of warbler up here. Some only live in the bottom, some live in the middle, some live in the top, kind of the mid to top level, some live in the top half, some in only the very top. Now, they all could live in all parts of this pine tree. However, by dividing the pine tree up, dividing the resource, they're all able to coexist. Okay, so that's what's called division of the resources. Now, we understand our fundamental niche. I could have been a doctor, I could have been a nurse, I could have been a physical therapist, I could have been a lot of different things in life, and so could somebody else, right? So if we're 2 different species and then we overlap, we're going to compete in the areas we overlap at, and what will end up happening is from this overlapped shared fundamental niche, we'll end up finding out what our realized niche is. And your realized niche is the role you actually perform. For me, it would be a teacher in that case. Do you guys understand that? Are there any questions? Actually, let's do this. Do you guys understand that? You all good there? And again, I won't know who you are, so you can put that wherever you want. The only person that will know is you. If you're in the middle and not moving, I'm going to wait. I want knowing where my cursor is. So I'm getting a couple iffy ones over here. Let's go back for a second. So this is one species fundamental niche. For me, that could be all of the jobs I could do. For an animal, it might be everything it could eat or could perform for that community. And then there's going to be another species. But sometimes and eventually, species, what they can do is going to overlap. In that area of overlap, that's what we call the shared fundamental niche, and competition will occur here. When competition happens, there can only be one winner usually, and that will give each species eventually what's called a realized niche, what they actually will do, because one of them will get beat out for part of that resource, or they'll divide it through competitive exclusion. Okay? Yeah. 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 One. Let's say you go to school to be a doctor, you get your or let's say you take a test and you can't pass it, right? I mean, you're all in the same pool. You take this test, you can't pass your doctor board exam, and so you have to go do something else, like be a PA or be a nurse, like you said. Yeah, for sure. So in resiliency, this is the next thing we need to talk about. An ecosystem can be destroyed or damaged by severe weather, humans, or introduced species. Other factors can help keep an ecosystem stable. What are some species Michigan has introduced that have disrupted our resiliency? Yeah, like invasive species. Not yet. What are some invasive species of Michigan? Are there invasive foxes? I don't know. I'd have to ask the fox, and then I would know what the fox is. Ding, 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 ding. No. That's the song got stuck in my head the other day. It was bad. Toads? Are there invasive toads in Michigan? Good Lord, I didn't know. Oh, come on, you guys. Really? Invasive toads, foxes, and tigers? How about Asian carp, gobies, emerald ash borer? You never heard of any of those? Zebra mussels are good. There we go. Yep, the Asian carps are the fish that jump out of the water, and they've killed a few people, actually. They put them along the water. And, yeah. Well, I mean, if you're going along at, like, what, 50, 60 miles an hour on a boat, and a big old fish like this jumps out of the water, it weighs like 30 pounds and hits you in the head and break your neck, right? I mean, that happens. They have to wear helmets if they're going to create a wake on parts of the Mississippi River. Yeah, because the wake is what makes them jump. So, and actually they jump behind them usually, so if you're following a boat, it's really bad. Can you imagine, like, water skiing? I wonder if they water ski. I've seen that too. Yeah, yep. That would be fun. I don't know if it's legal, but it looked like fun. I've seen it with the nets too, where they have the nets. They put a helmet on. You ever seen that? They put the helmet on. They got a big net behind the other boat that's making the wake. That just looks like raw hillbilly fun. It does. I don't know what you do with them after you catch them because they're disgusting fish. So you guys get the idea, like gobies for sure. So they definitely disrupt our resiliency. And the reason why is they decrease our biodiversity. So interactions between organisms and the number of species in an ecosystem add to the resiliency of the ecosystem. So a lot of times you go, oh, great, we're going to add species to our ecosystem and we'll be more biodiverse. The problem is, usually if they're not from there, they don't have natural predators to keep their population in check, and they'll start to take over habitats they don't belong in. And then they'll decrease your biodiversity overall. So higher biodiversity often helps make an ecosystem more resilient. And what do I mean by resilient? I mean able to bounce back from a catastrophic event. So let's say we go through global warming, or we have like a volcano or an earthquake or a hurricane hit, and it destroys a lot of species, not a lot of species, a lot of numbers of species in general. If I have a lot of different types of species, I'm more apt to have them be retained after this nasty event. That'll make more sense in a minute here. So if you look at this, everybody take a look at A, B, C, and D real quick. A has 1, 2, 3 different species and one of each. B has just one species. C has 3 of 4 different types of species. And D has 4 different types of species and a lot of 1. So looking at these, which of those 4 different examples would be the most resilient? So C for sure. And a few of you thought B and maybe A, but let's go back and look why. So let's just pretend that I lose 2 of every species in a hurricane. So, I only have 1, but I lost it. 1, 1. And then I lose 2 of every other species. So in Site A, I have complete extinction, right? Site B, complete extinction. Site C, I have full retention of all 4 species. And Site D, I'm only left with 1 species. Who's more resilient? C would be, right? And the resiliency, because you have many different types in lots of different each type, makes it more resilient. In humans, this is kind of representative of us, right? We have a lot of people on the planet, and we're starting to get less of other species. And we're less resilient because of that. And that's why we have to worry about things like endangered species and such, and why it is important. So predation can reduce the effects of competition among species, and predators can influence more than their prey. And when predators eat one species, they may reduce competition among other species. So it's a good thing. You go, oh, it's bad that coyotes eat rabbits, and you go, yeah, it's probably not fun to watch, but it really does help the rabbit population. Rabbits reproduce like bunnies, if you haven't heard, which means they make a lot of them, so they have multiple litters throughout the year. And because of that, they can have an explosion, and then they can get disease. They can suffer from inbreeding. They can have scarcity of food and start to starve to death. And rabbits are what are called a keystone species, but the fact that other species eat them is a good thing. That's also why hunting's a good thing, too. You wouldn't want deer to become overpopulated. You hit them with your car. They spread tuberculosis. There's a lot of reasons not to go hunting, but at least to support it, So a keystone species is a species that is critical to an ecosystem because the species affects the survival and number of many other species in its community. So if I asked you the question, what else besides coyotes is affected by rabbits? What else besides coyotes is affected by rabbits? And don't tell me roadrunners. That one's in my head. Or Elmer Fudd. Don't say Elmer Fudd. Wascally Webbit. What besides coyotes is affected by rabbits? Wascally Webbit. It's duck season. It's Webbit season. It's their food. No, but if there's not rabbits, it would affect if there were no rabbits, it would affect the coyote population. What else? What other populations do rabbits affect? Did you type that in? Okay. I'm waiting for 5 more. 4, 3, come on, get them in there. 2 and a half. There you go. So wolves, grass, yep. Rabbits actually help the grass, right? What if the grass just growed uncontrollably? Succession would happen, then you'd have bushes, then you'd have trees, and then there'd be no more grass, right? Humans, yeah, snakes, plants, yep. Every other animal, yes, but what are they? Hawks, foxes, carrots, bigger birds, yep, ducks. Never seen a duck eat a rabbit. I don't know, bear, if they can catch them for sure. Okay, so all of those things are affected by rabbits. Are rabbits a keystone species? Are rabbits a keystone species? Come on, it's quick yes or no. Gut instinct. So there is one no, but it is yes. Rabbits are a keystone species, all right? That means that they're a species that supports an entire community. If rabbits go away in Michigan, you guys, we lose a lot of coyotes, we lose a lot of wolves, we lose a lot of hawks, snakes, everything that eats them, and then we have our prairies start to go away because they keep our grasslands there, and so we have a lot of issues without rabbits. Mosquitoes are a keystone species. As much as I hate them, they are. If they go away, we got a problem with bats. There's no bats. There's no fish. Fish are huge. They eat mosquito larvae like crazy. And so frogs. There's a tons of things that eat all these different species. And a keystone species is something that's kind of the foundation for a community. So a quick summary, and I'll let you work. A niche includes the role that the organism plays in the community, and this role affects other organisms in the community. What's your job? That's basically what you're asking. It's not the habitat, it's what you do in the community. And competition for resources between species will shape the species' fundamental niche. A species can often do or occupy a lot of different areas and things, but it will only have one realized niche after competition and things take place. Now, interactions between organisms and the number of species in an ecosystem add to the stability of that ecosystem. Again, biodiversity makes you more resilient.